And did you know you can get away with the cheaper V30 SD cards and even shoot 4K 60 in 10-bit color? Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Marcel, and today we'll be talking about which memory card you should be getting for your Sony a7 IV, and by extension, even the Sony a7S III. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for more content from me. And if you're already subscribed, thank you again so much for being here again. I might sound a little bit muffled. I think I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, have a stuffy nose right now. So no, it's not your speaker or your headphones that are sounding muffled, it's just my voice. So if you have the new Sony a7 IV, or if you're considering buying the Sony a7 IV, one thing that can be very confusing is which memory card do you actually need? So the a7 IV has two memory card slots. Both can take SD cards, that UHS-2 cards, and one of the slots can also take a CF Express Type A card. If you're coming from the Sony a7 III or other APS-C cameras, it can get very confusing to figure out which card you actually need for video. So if you're coming from one of these cameras and you're not familiar with the CF Express Type A cards, these cards are insanely fast, but they're also insanely pricey. Their read and write speeds are also very fast. So these cards are very useful if you like to shoot a lot of burst photos. So just to give you an idea, for a 160GB card, you're paying about $400, which is quite expensive. On the flip side, if you get an SD card that is V30, you're paying about $80. These cards go on sale quite often and you can usually pick them up for about $30. But thankfully, the only time I think you might need a CF Express Type A card is if you shoot a lot of burst photos and you don't want your camera to stall while it tries to record all of those photos into your memory card. So if you're one to shoot a lot of burst photos, you might need to consider getting a CF Express Type A card, but keep in mind though that even with a V60 SD card, you're able to shoot about 30 photos straight before the camera starts to buffer, and with the V90 SD card, you're able to shoot about 60 or 66 photos consecutively. But if you're shooting video, you might not need a CF Express Type A card. So one of the things that you need to look for on memory cards, especially for this camera, or for any camera that can shoot high bit rate, is to look for the video speed label in the SD card. You see this in a lot of SD cards labeled as either V30, V60, or V90. And cards that are not minimum V30, then they're probably too slow to shoot video of high quality on the Sony a7 IV. In terms of which capacity you need to get, I usually like to get at least 128GB on my SD card, so that way I have more space to record footage before I have to switch cards. And keep in mind, if you want to record in the highest available data rate or bit rate, you're also going to need a lot more space on your memory card. So the more you have, the better. So I'll show you now which frame rates and which formats of video you're able to record on the Sony a7 IV with a V30 card and a V90 card. Keep in mind that the a7S III has similar formats as the a7 IV, so a lot of these settings will apply to that camera as well. On the SanDisk V30 card, we're able to shoot in the following settings. We can shoot in an a7iv HS, a7iv S 4K. We're able to shoot in 20 frames, 24 frames, 30 and 60 frames per second. And at 24 frames per second, for example, you're able to shoot at 100 megabits per second in 422 10-bit color, which is what you want to shoot with if you want the greatest flexibility in color correction. At 60 frames per second in 4K, you're able to shoot at 200 megabits per second in 422 10-bit, which is pretty cool. If you go here to this other codec in a7iv HS 4K, we're able to shoot at 24 and 60 frames per second. Also at 422 10-bit at 200 megabits per second, and in 24 frames per second, you're able to shoot at 100 megabits per second as well and 422 10-bit. With the V30 card, you're not able to shoot in a7iv in 4K and HD. You're going to need, as it says here, a V90 card or a CF Express Type A card. But to be honest, I haven't found much of a difference between shooting a7iv and a7iv other than that I codec gives you substantially larger file sizes. Another thing that you can do with a V30 card is if, for example, if you want to shoot at 120 frames per second in 422 10-bit. If you have the frame rate at 120 frames per second, it tells you that you need a V60 card or higher if you want to shoot in 10-bit. If you're okay shooting in 420 8-bit, actually it still tells you you still need a V60 card at least to shoot in
120 frames per second in SNQ mode. But if you're just shooting regular 120 frames per second, you can do it in HD in the a7iv HD setting, and then shoot at 120 frames per second, but you cannot shoot it in 422 10-bit color. So you need a card that is at least a V60. So the main difference between a V30 and a V60 is that with a V60, you're able to do all of the above, plus be able to shoot at 120 frames per second in 10-bit color in SNQ mode. Now let's go on and try the V90 card. So with the V90 card, you can pretty much shoot in any format for video. You are able to shoot in XAVCS HS, XAVCS 4K. Let's go try it out. Movie settings, 60 frames per second, 200 megabits per second, 422 10-bit. And if you go to XAVCS Intra in 4K, you're able to shoot in 422 10-bit as well, 240 megabits, and at 60 frames per second as well, and 600 megabits per second, 422 10-bit. Keep in mind though that if you shoot in the all intra setting, your memory card is going to run out really quick. And with a V90 card as well, we're able to shoot in SNQ mode, 120 frames per second, 10-bit color. So let's take a look. So we have XAVCSI HD because Sony a7 IV does not shoot 120 frames per second in 4K. So let's go on to SNQ settings. Our rec frame rate will be 24 and our frame rate 120 frames per second. And as you can see, we're able to shoot in 422 10-bit at a bit rate of 89 megabits per second. So with the V90 card, you're able to shoot in all of these formats. And if you wanted the highest data rate or format, you can shoot in intra mode, in SI all intra mode on the Sony a7 IV. So that's why you do not need a CF Express Type A card.
So you're able to capture high quality video with the V30 card. So in terms of quality, I find that the all intra format, it's very close to the one underneath it. And I usually just shoot in that instead because the size of the footage that I get when I shoot in all intra is just too massive for me at the moment, and it requires a ton of external storage. So when it comes to picking a brand, I've been using SanDisk and ProGrade for quite a few years, and they haven't failed me a single time. The ProGrade are a little bit cheaper than the SanDisk ones, especially when you're looking at V60 or V90 cards, and you're usually able to get them on sale, for example, during Black Friday. As usual, I'll also leave links in the description below to the memory cards that I have, and also links to the CF Express Type A cards so that you can see how expensive they are. So let me know in the comments below which brand of memory card you're currently using. So that's it for today's video. If you found it useful, informative, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell for future videos from me, and I'll see you next time.